Today I am in America, the land of the free and the home of the Donald. So in this video, I'm going to document my first day in the US as I arrived to Boston. We're going to explore this amazing city from its historic role in the birth of the nation to its intense sports culture, to understanding what the future of the city is actually going to look like. It's 8 a.m. on Thanksgiving Thursday, and I just got here after traveling for more than a day. So I left from Bangladesh, and my first stop was in Hong Kong, and had a pretty interesting experience with Cathay Pacific. So it's 6:30 a.m. in Hong Kong, and I think this trip is getting off to a really crazy start. So the staff at Cathay Pacific who I'm flying with happen to be my viewers, so they got me like a row for myself as a gift. Now someone showed up with my name and stuff, the map, just to explain to me how to get to my flight that is going to the US. Then after that, I think I had a 15 or 16 hour flight to JFK all the way to New York City, where I dropped off one of my bags, my bigger bag, at my uncle's place in Brooklyn. Then took the Flixbus, which was at 4 a.m. from Manhattan, and just got here after like 4 hours of journey. Got here a bit faster than I expected. And this is the coldest weather I have experienced in, I think, literally 2 years. It is 4 degrees Celsius, which is 8 degrees above freezing in Fahrenheit, and I'm going to try to get to the center of town. So I'm in Brookline right now, which is in the Boston metropolitan area, but it's not in the city of Boston. There's 4.9 million and almost 5 million people staying in this metropolitan area, making it the 11th largest metropolitan area in the US and the 3rd largest in the Northeast after New York and Philly. That right there was the bus that I actually just came on. And I didn't even know Flixbus came to the US. I thought it was like a European thing, a German company for the longest time. And you can see that even though we're not in the center of Boston, the buildings look a lot older than most places in the US, definitely a lot older than where I lived in LA. Now inside the actual city, it's very tightly packed. It looks like a European city more than it looks like most American cities. But we're not in the main city, and I'm gonna try to figure out what metro I have to take to get to the main city. You know, I'm complaining about the cold here, but it's probably not even that bad considering it's the end of November. Last time I was in Boston was in May, and it snowed when I was here for this interview. Okay, so I'm in the Green Line right now, which should take me to the center of Boston City in 20 minutes. This underground metro that I'm on is actually part of the oldest underground transit system in the entire US, older than New York, and it's actually the 3rd oldest in the world. Not all of it, like this part between Boylston Street and Park Street, or Government Center, and that was built in 1897. So the only other places that are older are the London Underground, that was built in 1890, and the Budapest Metro. Although people don't really associate Hungary with wealth now, Hungary was pretty rich 200 years ago, 100 years ago, and Budapest was one of the capitals of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, along with Vienna back in the days. Okay, it's 8:44 a.m. and I'm in proper Boston finally, as you can probably tell from the big buildings around me. What impresses me about this city is this is way smaller than LA, where I used to live, but it has much more of a core central city than LA does. LA is just more like a bunch of cities spread around. I mean, downtown has some big buildings, but not as dense as Boston, I'd say. And because it's Thanksgiving morning, I'm guessing that's why there's not a single soul around here. All these corporate buildings and streets are completely empty. Last time I was here for interview for an internship with Wayfair, this company, which is probably not too far from here, and it was packed. There's these really cool narrow streets, really old buildings. You don't really see anything like that in the newer cities in America, like in California and stuff. So I've arrived in front of my hotel, and it's still not even 9 a.m. so they're definitely not gonna let me check in, but I'm hopefully gonna drop off some of my stuff and come back later in the day. So Boston is one of the most expensive cities in America and also in the world. It has insanely high rent prices, or just property value, which is why I'm paying $150 a night for staying in a hotel near the Boston Center area. There were cheaper options, but anything cheaper seemed to have a lot of reviews about mold and not enough heating. And there were hostels that would have been $75 a night. So I just decided to get a hotel. So hotels usually never allow people to check in at 9 a.m. but somehow this one did for this one day. Alright guys, so normally apparently it costs $50 extra to check in early, but because it's Thanksgiving, they give me free early check-in. So I'm gonna drop off my bags and then go out to see that one place in Boston that I knew before I knew anything else about Boston. This is the view from my window, by the way. It's supposed to be on the 3rd floor of this room, but it looks like I'm on the 2nd floor because there's a parking lot. I will definitely not be opening those windows if it's possible to open them. Speaking of expensive hotels and money, if you're a Bangladeshi living abroad, especially in the US, and you're struggling to send money back to Bangladesh from the US, you should really check out this app called TapTapSend. TapTapSend is a very simple app using which you can send money back to Bangladesh. Now there are a lot of good reasons for using TapTapSend. First one is there's no transaction fee no matter how big of an amount you're sending. The second one is the transaction times are pretty fast as well. Number 3 is the exchange rates are really good. Number 4 is using TapTapSend, you can send money directly to a Bangladeshi bank account or a bKash account or a Nagad account or even a bank that uses PIN codes for pickup. And number 5, TapTapSend is offering a special promo code OTG for my viewers only that gives you a big bonus on your first transaction. So if you're living in the US like I was for many years and you use the promo code OTG on your first transaction, you get a $20 US bonus if you send money back. So make sure you use TapTapSend if you're sending money back to Bangladesh from the US. Now on to Boston. I'm so tired and I want to take a nap, but it is raining already and it's only going to rain more throughout the day, so I need to show you guys Boston before it rains too much. So I'm at this place which sports fans, or specifically basketball fans, might know about, the Garden, TD Garden. So Boston has an insane record for professional sports for a city this size. There are 4 major leagues in the US. There's the NFL for football, or American football, baseball league, the basketball league, the NBA, and the hockey league. And the city of Boston has won a total of 40 national championships in those main leagues. The only city that's won more championships is New York, and that's because the New York Yankees basically won, I think, like 35 championships. If you grew up here in the last 20-30 years, you probably saw your city win a championship every year, or every other year, honestly. I don't know anything about hockey, but I do know that Boston has the Red Sox, which is one of the greatest teams of all time. I never really followed the NFL much, but just in my time from living in the States for 10 years, there was no way to avoid Tom Brady winning championship after championship, Super Bowl after Super Bowl with the Patriots. Now the reason I knew about Boston long time before I knew anything about the history of Boston was because of the TD Garden and the team that plays here called the Boston Celtics. And this year actually they also won the championship, but I'm not a fan of the current Celtics team. I don't think there's a game here in the next 2 days while I'm here, so I won't be able to show you an actual game. But this place is pretty historic. It's still cold as but it stopped raining for a bit. So I'm gonna try to give you a broad overview of the general history of Boston. So evidence has showed that Native Americans have actually lived in the area that is Boston, and there's evidence that they were fishing here even up to 7,000 years before the first European settlers arrived. But the history of the city of Boston can be tied back to the European settlers that arrived around 1630, I believe. And when European settlers arrived here, not just to Boston or New England, but when they arrived to North America, they brought with them diseases like measles and smallpox, which the Native Americans had no resistance to because they just didn't have those diseases before people from these urban centers came to North America. And these diseases tragically wiped out 90% of the people, of the Native Americans that are living here in North America. No other city in America has made as much of an effort as Boston to preserve its early days. The metro that we saw earlier is the oldest in the US. The first ever public park in the US is also next to that ancient metro line. So Boston was initially the largest town in the 13 colonies that the Brits established in North America until Philadelphia eventually overtook it in the 18th century. Back in the colonial days, this town was engaged mostly in shipping and trading and fishing, and became one of the wealthiest port cities in the whole world at that time. There's this route called the Boston Freedom Trail that takes you on a walking trail along some of the most historic or most iconic sites for the history of Boston. So we're not gonna see every single spot on the Freedom Trail, especially in this weather, but I'm gonna go to one of those spots right now that is historic not just for the city of Boston, but a very important place of historic significance for the country. Okay, I'm taking a break at Dunkin' Donuts because my fingers literally froze. I need to thaw them out a little bit before I go out and film the rest of the video. Coffee helps. Hash browns. All I had this morning was a couple of bananas. So that tiny little building in the middle of these high-risers behind me is probably the most iconic building on the Freedom Trail I talked about earlier. That is the Old State House, which is the oldest public building in Boston, which was built in 1713. Now serves as a history museum which is fitting because of how historic it is. I'll talk more about that under the shade there because it's pouring right now if you can't tell. When this was a British colony, there was a lot of resistance to taxation in the new colonies by the British Parliament. The famous saying was no taxation without representation, because the people that were living in the colonies were not represented by members of parliament in the British Parliament, and they did not want to pay taxes to a government that was not even representing their interests. So Boston as a town was one of the centers to resistance to taxation. Because there was so much resistance here, the British actually stationed some of their troops over here. So on a cold night in March of 1770, there was a disagreement between the people that were living here, you know, the settlers, and the British troops, which ended up going out of hand, and the British troops actually fired at the crowd that had gathered around these troops. And they killed 5 of the people, and many people were injured, and by the next morning everyone was calling it a bloody massacre. This event was widely publicized in the colonies and fueled a very revolutionary sentiment in Boston and in the colonies. This was called the Boston Massacre, and actually happened right here outside the State House. It's considered one of the key events that turned the general sentiment in the colonies against King George of Britain and against the British Parliament. In 1773, the Parliament again passed this thing called the Tea Act, which is basically another way of trying to get more taxes from the colonies. Boston people once again revolted. They went to these ships that were docked in the Boston harbor. These ships basically had tea brought from the Indian subcontinent by the East India Company. So these revolutionaries basically went into these ships and dumped boatloads of tea into the ocean, called the Boston Tea Party. And the British government reacted furiously to this provocation. One thing led to the other, and the American Revolution, or the American War of Independence, was underway because of these events. 6 years after the Boston Massacre happened, shots were fired again in this very square, this time for celebration. Earlier in July that very year, the Declaration of Independence was signed by the founding fathers of the US, and on 18th July, the Declaration of Independence was read for the first time to the people of Boston from the balcony of the State House. The people of Boston cheered on, celebrating the movement towards independence. So the war didn't end in 1776, but ultimately the people of the colonies won the war against the British government, and America became the independent country of the United States of America that it is today. It was much smaller back then, but that was the start. It is so much warmer down here. Yo, 30. Despite what some politicians will try to tell you, America is a country made by immigrants, made for immigrants. And the unique culture that is American culture today is a product of all the people that moved here and the things they did. And one of the biggest holidays, probably one of the 2 biggest or 3 biggest holidays of the year, is Thanksgiving, which is today. And today I'm going to celebrate that with one of my best friends actually, who is from Boston, but I know her from Belgrade because she lives in Belgrade, Serbia, and I basically spend every summer there. We happen to be at the same place at the same time, so I'm gonna go have Thanksgiving dinner at 2:30 p.m. with her family, and her family are all American, but they're all of Irish descent, which actually makes up one of the largest ethnic groups of people in Boston. I didn't film much that evening because it basically didn't make sense to film a family gathering, but I basically had a wholesome Thanksgiving dinner with my friend Maeve's extended family. So it's day 2. The sun is finally out and it's Friday, so more places are open. And I'm about to go eat at my favorite fast food place in America. And chicken, please. So this is the burrito bowl that I used to get every day when I lived in the States for 10 years. So the food at this Chipotle was the same as I've had anywhere else in America, but this one has a unique history that is very different from any of the other Chipotles. This building was constructed in 1718 and is actually the oldest commercial building in all of Boston. It was home to one of the biggest publishers in the city that published countless classics like The Scarlet Letter. So pretty historic Chipotle, I gotta say. So not inside the actual proper city center of Boston, but right next to it is this town called Cambridge, which is essentially an extension of Boston. It's definitely at the very center of the Boston metropolitan area, let's say. It only takes 10 to 15 minutes to get here from the very center of Boston using the metros. And in that town are some of the most prestigious universities in the world. There's MIT, and then there is Harvard, which is where we are right now. So Harvard is the oldest institute of higher education in the US and was built in 1636. Not only is it historic, it's also a place that creates figures of the future. Harvard alumni, faculty, and researchers include 188 living billionaires, 8 former US presidents, and 24 heads of states in other countries, founders of countless massive companies, and a lot of Nobel laureates. Harvard isn't the only institute of higher education that's very prestigious in the Boston area. And because of that, Boston has emerged as a global leader in higher education and research. It is the largest biotechnology hub in the whole country and is a national leader today in scientific research, law, medicine, engineering, and business. There are nearly 5,000 startups operating in the city of Boston right now, which makes this place a global pioneer in entrepreneurship and innovation, and more recently in AI. Oh, there's a dog. So for this reason, we can say that Boston's not just a historic city, which it surely is, but it's also like a city of the future, where people of the future and things that are going to be created that we're going to be using in the future are created. It's funny because it's Thanksgiving break. There's like literally no students around because everyone's home or off to somewhere else, and it's all tourists like me around here. And with that, I think I'm just about done with this video. If you want to see more videos like this, feel free to subscribe to my channel or follow my Facebook page. And if you want real-time travel updates, feel free to follow me on Instagram @Nadir on the go. I'll catch you guys on the next video from New York City.